What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Deborah Rao YouTube channel. We're back with our top 25 series. We have a lot of fun with this series, counting down the athletics top 25. Right now, we are talking about number 19, Arizona Wildcats. We're going to be going through what their 2024 outlook looks like, schedule, transfers, offense, defense, recruiting class, all of the things you want to know about Wildcat football. We will be talking about it. But before we can do that, we got to talk about Arizona last year. They were phenomenal last year. They finished 11th in the final AP poll, 10-3. But when you look at their schedule, man, they could have easily made the playoff. They could have competed for the championship out there in the Pac-12 the last year. They lost by 7 to Mississippi State early in the year. They lost by 7 to Washington, which was a tough game there, and then 2 to USC. And they should have won that game. If you watched that game, that was a game that they should have won. And then they went on a winning streak down the stretch, even in the Alamo Bowl against Oklahoma. That was a great game there in terms of what they were able to put on the field. And many were picking them to win the Big 12 this year as they go into the new conference. And then they got a shocker. Jedd Fisch left, and now that's what we'll get into when we talk about what their team looks like there. But from just a talent perspective, they had dudes. Noah Fifita was great out there. Jonah Coleman, Ted McMillan, all of these guys. And it looked like they were on their way up after going, 1-11 that first year. Now, though, college football has changed, right? And we're going to get into that. Let's talk about their offense in 2024. New coach, new coaching staff, everything there. What do we expect from Arizona, Christian?
The main thing is that they have 5 returning offensive linemen that are going to be starting. Raymond Polito played some guard for them last year. He's going to take over for Jordan Morgan at left tackle, but the rest of this group is fantastic. They had a really productive year. Jonas Sabanaia is a first-round offensive tackle potentially, but really everything starts with Noah Fifita and Ted McMillan. Ted McMillan is looking like a top 10 pick. So this team has talent. The running back room is going to look a little bit different. Jonah Coleman transferred out. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt and Quali Conley are coming in as transfers. And Quali Conley is coming over from San Jose State, where their new head coach is from. So I think he's going to get some run. Raymello Murphy was okay last year, but Noah Fifita, while I don't necessarily think that he has NFL upside, he's a small guy, but he is a fantastic quarterback, especially when it comes to playing quarterback in college. Yeah. So I'm excited to see what this offense can do. It will look a little bit different. Jedd Fisch's offense was really efficient last year. I'm curious to see if they can keep up that efficiency. But if you look on the screen, like graded out, they were just a fantastic offense last year.
Yeah, and Brent Brennan coming over from San Jose State is a pretty good offensive mind. I mean, we were talking about it pre-show. When you talk about San Jose State, it's one of the worst programs out there that have to coach. And if you're successful there, you can really be successful anywhere. And I think that was a good get for Arizona for, kind of their financial troubles they got out there trying to get guys. It's a weird situation out there with Arizona and all that kind of stuff going on, all the rumors. But last year, like you said, this offense was very good. 34 points per game at 14th in the country. That's where, you really saw that. They scored at a high efficient rate. Third down conversion, they were number 5 in the country, almost 50% third down conversion rate. That's kind of absurd when you think about kind of what, your offense is putting on the field. Passing, though, is, where you mentioned it. Completion percentage, Noah was number 5 in the country last year. When you look at passing yards per game, 8 in the country last year. And even from like a rushing standpoint, yards per rush, they were pretty good, but they were a passing offense. That's really where they stand out. So that's where we're getting into kind of some of these transfers also from the running back position. Maybe they can booster up that rush, percentage, rushes per game, rushing yards per game. But Noah, this is where it starts. Noah and Ted, what are you going to do with them? They stayed. I know they flirted a little bit. I believe the rumor out there is they were flirting with Alabama as a duo, and I think that's interesting. But hey, they kept them. That's really the big takeaway for me in this offense. When you talk about losses, really, like when you go through the losses here, Jordan Morgan, Jonah Coleman, Michael Wiley, Tanner McLaughlin for the tight end position. I'm a big believer in Jonah Coleman. I liked him coming out. He's a California kid, 3-star kid that went to Arizona. Last year when you watched him, he was their leading rusher, 871 yards and 5 touchdowns. Also added 283 yards from a receiving standpoint. Riley was kind of always that guy that just kind of was that thunder lightning guy, could come in, catch some passes and do those things. Not a ton of huge losses though, because even though, this team stuck together, right? That was that big mantra this year. And that's why Jedd Fisch took a little heat, because he talked about being together, never leaving each other, all that. Then he left, but this team stuck to that core. They stayed. And so, bigger guys there. I mean, Jacob Cowing also could have been on this list, wide receiver out there. But just little things like that, not big losses.
Yeah, I think the main thing is 4 of those names that you just mentioned are losses because of the NFL draft and not
Yeah.
losses because the transfer portal
Hmm.
kinda depleted this roster. I mean, Jonah Coleman is a big loss, but like we talked about, I think they got in a couple of transfer running backs that I think can at least, run this new offense to a more efficient, maybe not as efficient as last year, but at least efficient enough to get some heat off of Noah Fafita. But yeah, not a ton. Jordan Morgan was a really, really good offensive tackle. That's why he went so high in the NFL draft. But it's not like they're in trouble on the offensive line based on
No.
what we saw last year with the other guys. So
Yeah, and I think, like you said, they built a pretty good depth there, and them keeping people in the transfer portal was huge for them. Like that is the number one thing I think we have to kind of go over with this offensive side. And this recruiting class wasn't terrible when you're looking at the composite rank and the overall rank for the 2024 class, top 50-ish class. I mean, it's hard to kind of keep those guys. They lost Damon Williams, he went to Washington, quarterback, the little guy, 5'9", 174. Fish has his quarterback, so he left. But you have still Jordan Washington out there, running back from Long Beach, California. 5'10", 170, four-star kid. They were able to keep them. They kind of looked at that tight end position today. We're going to shore up that. And really, the way I look at this, like interior offensive line with Michael Watkins, him there, kind of wide receiver position, more of like, all right, how are we going to plug in, just develop some of these guys and then go in the transfer portal and try to grab some guy in the transfer. I think that's really what he did in this class. And for his first class, Brent Brennan's first class is not bad with when Fish left and kind of how the recruiting trail kind of works there. This is very much a hodgepodge, and we're going to have to kind of look at the next couple years and see how he's going to do.
yeah, for sure. I think, Jordan Washington's the big get. I do think Brandon Phelps is an interesting name. He was offered by quite a few Power 5 programs, which is kind of, 3-star guys don't always have that. They normally have like a kind of condensed list, but Michigan State offered him. I know Michigan State's program's not great right now, and maybe that doesn't indicate much, but Arizona State, there was a little bit of interest in that kid. So I'm excited to see if maybe he can develop into something. But overall, it's a fine class. I mean, it's tough to keep a good class when you have head coaching turnover. So, like you said, I think we'll see what the recruiting looks like in the next couple of years to see what this team will look like as they transition to the Big 12.
Yeah, and really where it comes down to these transfers, like you look at the list, baby. This is a college football 2024, unless you're at Clemson. This is what the transfers look like. Kedrick Riscano, running back out of Ole Miss. Michael Wooten, interesting tackle out there in terms of how they're rated, these guys. Those are the two highest rated according to On3 in terms of the transfer portal class. But then you got some other guys, some interesting. Ja'Cory Merritt, from New Mexico, going to Arizona. And people really like him. Like they're looking at him as being kind of that guy in this class. Kind of went all through it. Quali Conley from the running back position, Ryan Stewart, really kind of getting guys that kind of fit in there. Anthony Garcia, the San Jose State kid coming over and knows the system, right? 6'3", 170, kind of a smaller guy, but coming over there with his coach. So interesting kind of how he filled out this kind of roster, but not bad. Pieces that can help them compete this year for a Big 12 title.
Yeah, the running backs are kind of the big ones to me. I mean, Riscano just never had a chance for an opportunity at Ole Miss, and I kind of like him. I think there's a chance that he works his way into that rotation, but I think getting the offensive tackle depth too is critical. It's something that not a lot of teams were able to do in the portal this year. So getting 3 offensive tackles that I think can compete, at least push that left tackle position that you're trying to fill from Jordan Morgan's departure. Overall, though, I mean, just a fantastic transfer class. This is what we see with new coaches. We see a lighter recruiting class, heavier on the transfers, at least in that first year. We'll see how it develops. But overall, this is college football. Like you said, this is what it is now.
This is what it is. I mean, when you're looking at this, though, you have to give them credit for kind of building this. And I think the coaching staff understood. And he did keep some of his coaches. I know that was a big thing out of there. Like they were able to keep some of Fish's assistants. They stayed in Arizona. That helped him, like able to kind of have that base there. Hey, we're going to have those guys. And really, it comes down to these probably 3 guys, right? When we're talking about impact players, Noah Fafita, Ted McMillan, Ja'Cory Merritt is another one from that running back position. But I do think Riscano is one of those guys that we have to talk about as being, if he gets opportunity, it's like, oh, NFL upside, because he's always kind of had the talent, just hasn't been down the field. The big thing with Ted McMillan, I'll kind of go over, I think he's going to compete for wide receiver 1 of the class with him and Luther Burden. I know they're kind of fighting for it right now. 6'5", 210. And when you go through all his numbers, 89.1 PFF receiving grade. When you're looking at just offensive grade, is 87.4 there. Yak 6.0, yards per route run 2.79. You're talking like just a great player. Like, and I kind of comped him to Mike Evans, early on. I just like the comp just because the size. I understand the weight might not be there, but just he's a special athlete. And I think the interesting thing about him is like he can play inside and out too. He can get a little slot percentage in there. It's like 25% out wide. Like he gives this team just that next level athlete. And that was a huge thing to keep him before he goes to the NFL this year.
Yeah, the running joke is that Fafita and McMillan have been playing together forever. That's a joke in the draft community, and you can tell that they have a ton of chemistry. But McMillan is just an elite player. I think he's a top 10 NFL draft pick. I don't think the same of Fafita, but like I said, from a college quarterbacking perspective, when you talk about Heisman dark horses, I think Fafita should be in there, just with how efficient he was last year. If he completes 70% of his passes again, I think this offense can put up some points. I think they're going to compete based on what those two, and then just the whole running back room. We can make it Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, but also just whoever emerges as that leading running back. I think this offense is pretty scary, to be honest.
Haven't given up on you, Rayshon Luke. Haven't given up. I still believe.
He's still
think he's still there. He's still that playmaker there. All right, let's flip over to the defense. Last year, when you look at the defense, they were a pretty solid number. Opponents points per game against them, 30th in the college football. That's not bad. Couldn't get off the field though on third down. That's definitely one area where they struggled. They were top basically 100 in there, 100th overall getting off on third down conversion rate against opposing offenses. But rush percentage, rush defense, they were very, very good. Opponent rushing play percentage was only 11th. Yards per game for them was, when you're looking at it, is 26th. So they really held their opponents there. Defense from a pass perspective, that's where they did struggle. Like when you're looking at it there, passing yards per game, they were 89th in the country last year. Just wasn't there. And in sack percentage, they were okay. They went after the ball. They're at 34 in the nation. They're 7% sack percentage there per game. But really that comes down to, rushing defense was great. Passing defense, they struggled at times, and that's really where you saw those losses that happened, especially that USC game. So really that's where the area that they need to get better at this season.
Yeah, I will say Takario Davis, I wouldn't put much of the passing defense's problems on him. That's a potential first round pick as well. When you have potential first round picks on both sides of the ball, there's a reason they're a top 20 team. I think the Athletic was pretty spot on with that. But Justin Flo was one of those Oregon linebackers that didn't really pan out. He kind of sat behind, I don't even remember all the linebackers that have been in Oregon, but he transferred over. He's been inconsistent. I think they're hoping that he takes another step forward. He's a veteran type of player. Trey Smith, the defensive end, is coming over from San Jose State. So one thing about Brennan is he's just bringing over his dudes, and they're slated to play. So I think he has a lot of belief in his players, and all of the players that he brought over were really good for San Jose State. So I'm curious to see how it meshes, how it gels. But this defense, the offense is going to carry this team. I think there's some talent. John O'Price is a freshman that they're pretty excited about out there. But when you have that as one of your starters or projected starters, I think that speaks to the inconsistencies that we saw last year.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the name that keeps coming out, obviously, Trey Smith transfer, that name comes out. Traydon Stukes as well. They talk about him being like that Swiss Army knife. Like they really like that kid. And those are the things that really come out of there. And like when you look at the notable losses, not anything crazy there. I know Taylor Upshar, I think he had 8.5 sacks last year. So really you saw that where a lot of their sack percentage came from. Vician's Prysock, when you're looking at him, 1 interception last year, overall 7 pass deflections. So he didn't do too bad there. 61 tackles as well. 2 guys that definitely, they missed them. And they lost some guys in the transfer portal kind of to Washington, but not anything notable with what they brought over, and especially with their new head coach.
Yeah, Prysock, a lot of snaps. I think that's the main thing is he played a lot of snaps, but overall, this not much lost. Just a lot of guys that transferred in. With the list of transfers is huge. The list of recruits isn't, which is kind of a running theme for this team right now.
Yeah, the recruiting class for the defensive side, it's short, as we can get there. Like not a lot of guys there. Cyrus Durham, John O'Price, Jabari Mann, Edwua Equinde, I think is how you say it. Don't yell at me in the comments. I know you guys like to yell at me. But the highest rated guy is Cyrus Durham, 3-star kid, 6'4", 240 when you're looking at the position. Not bad in terms of like, kind of, number 5, technically, state 13 with what they have. College of San Mateo, though, he's coming over from there. So you're looking at experienced kid as well. So that could be an interesting piece to kind of throw in there. But yeah, the transfers are where they got a lot of their dudes from.
Yeah. But like I said, John Price is slated to be an impact player as early as his true freshman year. So that's kind of exciting that they have a piece that they're excited about. They're talking about how his instincts, like his football intelligence, is just so far advanced for what normal true freshmen are. So despite having a small class, if you can get one of these guys meaningful playing time from the get, and one with length, maybe he's 6'2", they like their long cornerbacks out in Arizona. So I'm curious to see if he can come in and be one of those impact players right away.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like if they can hit a couple of these guys, it definitely shores up that team and that defense for the next couple of years where, hey, we start filling in some pieces around them. This is where we can create our identity, which is new coaches, what they're going to try to do there. Really, the transfers, I mean, I didn't know we had enough room to put them all on here. And I'm definitely not reading through all of them and going through. But some guys that I think, we should definitely just kind of highlight a little bit, in terms of highest rated on 3 recruiting transfer over there. Jordan Shaw was up there pretty high in terms of that. Jack Luttrell, also from Tennessee, coming over from Tennessee as a safety. Other guys too, Jara Anderson coming over from Memphis. A lot of, interesting pieces, like guys that could really kind of step in there. Chase Kennedy from Utah. We've talked about some of the San Jose State guys, Trey Smith on there. What do you think about this transfer class?
I mean, let's just throw darts, right? Like that's pretty much what this is. Groves Killebrew is probably going to get some run at corner. Chubba Mae is probably going to play a meaningful role on the interior there. Chase Kennedy is one of those guys that is coming over from Utah. Didn't really have as much opportunity as maybe I think he would have liked, but I think can play an important rotational role for them. So yeah, this transfer class is stacked between their offense and their defense. Like, there's a reason their transfer rank is inside the top 40. It's just, I mean, depth alone in these classes is what pushes that up, I think.
All right, let's talk about impact players for you. Tacario Davis, cornerback there. Edge, Jacob Manu. Dalton Johnson as well. And if you guys don't know who Jacob Manu is, he's a linebacker out there. He made 116 tackles last season. I mean, that was really kind of his guy. And I know tackles is one of those stats I don't know. People roll their eyes a little bit on that, but I mean, he was definitely one of their leaders out there when you talked about him. Who stands out for you as we head into this 24 season that you think needs to have a big year?
Tacario Davis just needs to continue what he's doing. If he can take away half the field and kind of generate turnovers in a way that I think he's capable of. Last year, only had the 1 interception, but 12 pass breakups per PFF. So if he can continue to be that shutdown, lockdown corner on that side of the field, I think they're in good shape. But that said, there's a reason that some of these names are like, let's hope that they're good this year. I think some of these transfers are going to come in. I think Trey Smith could be an impactful player, but we have to see it. There's a ton of guys that haven't played this level of competition yet. So we're going to see what they can do.
Yeah, I mean, Davis and Johnson last year combined for 192 tackles. And then when you throw a Manu in there, I mean, those guys just tackle machines in this defense and float around. So you have to get a shout out there. And I also got to shout out Tyler Loop, kicker, one of the best kickers in college football, 49 for 57 in his career. He's made all of his extra point attempts. I probably just jinxed you out there, Tyler Loop, but hey, he's been doing that. So you had that spot shored up. Now let's get into the schedule. Let's talk about this here. When we're looking at Arizona, this is one of the lower win totals that we have. We have 7.5. And after last year, you'd expect them kind of be a little higher because of how they finished. But again, the staff, the kind of turnover, the transfers that we talked about. Not a bad schedule to start, though. New Mexico, Northern Arizona. And then you're talking about a little bit of a rougher schedule in the Big 12, right? You got Utah on the schedule. Kansas State's going to be a little bit tough. At those 2 spots is going to be those are huge games at the beginning of the year. Like if you could split one of those, I think you'd be really excited to come out of that stretch 3-1. But some tougher games, right? Versus Colorado at UCF is going to be a very tough game versus Houston at TCU. Like you're really finishing with some tougher games. I can see why the 7.5 is there. But where are you leaning in with that number and what is your takeaways from that schedule too?
as I look through the schedule, I lean over, if only because I think they're getting 8. So
Yeah.
it's right on the border there. Utah is probably a loss. At Kansas State's a really tough game. It's winnable though. I think when you start to like look at a schedule and you say, man, I don't know if they can win that one. I lean on the quarterback, and I think
Mhm.
Noah Fafita is probably better than most quarterbacks on this list, if not all quarterbacks on this list from a college football perspective. So I think at UCF's a really, really tough game. I think going at UCF versus Houston at TCU is a really tough stretch. But I'm leaning the over because I think this team has enough offensive firepower to get through most matchups. They can keep up with everyone. If they can, if this offense continues to be efficient against Utah, I don't know how Utah's offense keeps up with them. I know we've already talked about Utah, but that to me, I
Yeah.
lean the over. I'm going like 8 to 9 wins for this team.
Yeah, I'm at 9. So when I was doing this and going through my stuff, so I hit the over here, and it really comes down to you lean on the best players, especially on the offensive side of the ball in this conference, who can score points, and if your defense can just get a little bit better, like if that pass defense, like you were explaining, gets a little bit better there, I think they hit 9. I think it's 8 to 9, but I do think I read 9 here, and if they get a win against. Oh gosh, you beat Utah. Now we're talking 10 wins, and now we're talking maybe Big 12, pushing for that there. And I know they want it. Listen, the analytics guys are going to hate this. They want to show their coach he made the bad decision by going to Washington. There's a little bit of like gamemanship with this stuff. And I know people roll their eyes, but it's true. It's going to be like, hey, we're going to show you should have stayed. I think that there is going to be that. It's a little bit of like major league, right? Okay, hey, what do we got to do? We got to go win the whole effing thing. Like, I think Arizona's like that. Let's get to the playoff and show our old coach that we could go to the playoffs. So I do think there's a little bit of that also. I think that plays a role in this. So to me, looking at the schedule, and good thing they finished with that cupcake Arizona State out there. I think that they're going to win that. They get to 9 games. I think they're going to compete there. The biggest thing for me with Arizona is, Fish had done a good job of building this up. And I think that they were in the running for the last 2 years of what they want to do. Can Brent Brennan come in there with a weird kind of, financial situation going on there, not in the Power 4, right? So the group of 5 now, or however you want to call it there, non-Power 4. What does that look like moving forward? Can they recruit at that high level? Can they get these transfers? What do they do? But making the playoff will go a long way into doing that.
Yeah. Overall, I think the outlook past this year is a little murkier than what this year brings us because of Fafita and McMillan, and maybe Fafita's there another year. But if McMillan's there another year, something went drastically wrong. And so I'm curious to see how this program continues to build forward. But for this year, they look like a potential playoff team. Really anyone in that 10 to 20-ish range look like potential playoff teams. So this could be one of those 12 teams that gets in and gets to play for a college football championship.
And their conference is wide open. That's why we keep saying this with the Big 12. If anybody goes on a run and competes there, they're in, right? But I do think they're only getting 1 in unless the other team has 1 loss. So you really got to position yourself into getting close to that. That's why that Utah game on their schedule is going to be massive for them. That's going to be the big one. So, all right. Appreciate you guys. Arizona fans, let us know what you think in the comments. Who do you think is going to, what do you think their over-under is going to be? Let us know how much you hate Jed Fish. We love the algorithm boost there. Just tell me how much you hate his face. That would really help us out. Hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll check you guys on the next one.